In the quiet stillness of late-night California highways, long before the world truly understood the chilling psychology of serial killers,
One man moved almost invisibly through society, blending intellect with brutality in a way that made him uniquely terrifying.
he was not just someone operating in the shadows, but a physically imposing and highly intelligent individual, whose calm demeanor concealed a mind capable of unspeakable violence. And as you listen closely, you begin to realize that what makes his story so deeply disturbing isn't just what he did, but how clearly he understood it, how precisely he could explain it, and how dangerously close he came to being overlooked entirely. Born in 1948, his early life already suggested underlying struggles, shaped by a deeply troubled household, where his relationship with his mother was toxic, humiliating, and psychologically damaging, planting seeds of resentment that would later grow into something far darker, something that would eventually blur the line between calculated thought and uncontrollable impulse.
And yet, even as a child, Kemper displayed signs of intelligence far beyond his years, scoring an IQ reportedly
Indicating a high level of intelligence, making the events that followed appear unusually deliberate and complex, as if every action had been processed, analyzed, and understood before it was ever carried out. A mind that didn't simply react, but observed, cataloged, and internalized every emotion, every humiliation, every moment of perceived rejection.
storing them like fuel waiting for ignition. By the age of 15, the first irreversible line had already been crossed.
When, at a young age, he was involved in a violent incident involving his grandparents, something that deeply surprised investigators, not just because of its severity, but because of the calm explanation he later gave, claiming he wanted to see what it felt like to kill his grandmother and then killed his grandfather to spare him the grief. A chilling glimpse into a mind that was already rationalizing violence in disturbingly logical terms.
Where empathy seemed detached and replaced with cold reasoning, and though he was sent to a psychiatric facility rather than prison.
What happened there would later become one of the most haunting aspects of his story. Because instead of being broken down or rehabilitated, Kemper studied, observed, and learned, gaining deep insights into psychology, manipulation, and the very systems designed to contain individuals like him.
Turning what should have been a place of correction into a classroom, absorbing knowledge about behavioral patterns, diagnostic methods, and therapeutic language.
Effectively equipping himself with tools that would later allow him to mask his true nature with unsettling precision. Doctors evaluated him, spoke with him, analyzed his thoughts, yet somehow missed the true depth of danger he posed. And in a twist almost too surreal to believe, he became a model patient, even assisting staff with administering psychological tests to other inmates.
Learning how professionals assessed criminal minds, understanding the language of mental illness, and mastering the art of appearing reformed.
Which ultimately led to a decision that would have devastating consequences. He was released back into society at just 21 years old, deemed no longer a threat. A judgment that would soon prove catastrophically wrong and would later be scrutinized as a deeply concerning outcome in psychiatric evaluation. After returning to California, he attempted to build a normal life,
Working various jobs and even forming connections with local law enforcement officers at a bar they frequented.
a place where he would sit, drink, and engage in casual conversation with the very people hunting individuals like him, all while hiding in plain sight. His intelligence allowing him to mimic normalcy with unsettling precision, adopting mannerisms, humor, and conversational ease that disarmed suspicion. And then, in 1972, the killings began again.
This time with a pattern that would define his legacy as one of the most chilling figures in true crime history, targeting young female hitchhikers along the highways.
Offering them rides, presenting himself as harmless, even friendly, before revealing the monster beneath. And what makes these encounters especially concerning is the level of control he maintained, often engaging others in conversation, sometimes even debating within himself whether to let them go, describing later how one part of him wanted to release them,
while another part insisted on carrying out the act. A psychological duel that played out in real time inside his mind.
And yet, more often than not, the darker impulse prevailed, leading to a series of killings marked not just by violence, but by a disturbing level of post-crime behavior that revealed the depth of his psychological disturbance. Actions that went far beyond murder into something far more grotesque and deeply unsettling, reinforcing the idea
That his crimes were not merely acts of impulse, but expressions of deeply rooted psychological conflict.
As the incidents increased, so did his confidence. His ability to avoid suspicion strengthened by his intelligence and understanding of investigative processes. And perhaps most disturbingly, his interactions with law enforcement continued, sometimes even discussing the ongoing murders in a detached, analytical manner, offering insights that were eerily accurate, as if he were both the hunter and the hunted simultaneously.
Playing a game that only he fully understood, carefully managing his public persona while internally navigating the escalating intensity of his compulsions.
And yet beneath this calculated exterior, something was building, a pressure that would eventually lead to the most shocking, because while his victims had been strangers up until that point, the source of his deepest anger, the person he blamed for much of his psychological torment, had always been closer to home. An unresolved emotional core that continued to intensify with each passing crime.
In 1973, that tension reached its breaking point when Kemper murdered his own mother, an act that he later described with a level of detail
that was both clinical and deeply disturbing, as if he were dissecting not just the event but the emotions behind it, revealing a culmination of years of resentment, anger, and psychological turmoil. And in the aftermath, he committed acts that further underscored the extent of his psychological collapse, actions that are difficult to comprehend, but impossible to ignore.
When trying to understand the complexity of who he was and what influenced his actions, it marked a turning point, where the line between deliberate behavior
and complete loss of control seemed to dissolve entirely. What followed next, however, is perhaps the most chilling aspect of all. Not another violent act, not an attempt to escape, but a decision that defied expectations. He chose to turn himself in. I'm calling the police and confessing to everything. Initially, they weren't even taking me seriously because the idea that this seemingly cooperative, intelligent individual
could be responsible for such crimes seemed almost unbelievable. And yet, as the evidence mounted and his detailed confessions were verified,
the reality became undeniable, bringing an end to a killing spree that had claimed multiple lives and left an indelible mark on the field of criminal psychology. During the trial and the years that followed, his intelligence once again stood out, as he took part in detailed interviews and discussions about his experiences, helping psychologists and investigators better understand the behavior and motivations of serial killers, contributing to the development of profiling techniques
that would later be used in countless investigations, a contribution that is as valuable as it is unsettling, because it came from someone who not only committed these acts,
but could articulate them with chilling clarity, offering a window into a mindset that most people would rather never confront. And even in confinement, he remained a subject of fascination for experts seeking to understand the intersection of intelligence and violence. Even while incarcerated, he continued to demonstrate his intellectual abilities, taking part in programs and recording audiobooks for the visually impaired, and maintaining a demeanor that often appeared calm and cooperative. A stark contrast to the violence of the past. The idea that someone capable of such brutality could also possess such intelligence, such awareness, such an ability to function within society, raising questions that linger long after the details of his crimes fade. Questions about how well we truly understand the human mind. Even while incarcerated, he continued to demonstrate his intellectual abilities, participating in programs and recording audiobooks for the visually impaired,
slipping through systems designed to detect individuals like him, exploiting their weaknesses with a level of awareness that few could have anticipated.
His story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil, not as something always chaotic or irrational, but as something that can be calculated, self-aware, and deeply embedded within a person who, on the surface, might seem entirely ordinary. Someone who could hold conversations, build relationships, and appear trustworthy while concealing a reality that defied comprehension.
And as those moments on California highways fade into the past, the story remains, not just as a cautionary account,
but as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous individuals are not the ones who appear broken or unstable, but the ones who understand themselves and their actions far too well, leaving behind a narrative that continues to unsettle, disturb, and challenge our understanding of human nature itself. I have looked through all the evidence, and I believe I know who did this. I will not stop until the truth is revealed.